So before you get started doing your exposure and alternative response practice, there are a couple of things you're going to need to do or have done. So the first is kind of obvious, but that is to understand the unhelpful cycle of OCD and to understand the treatment process. So if you've got this far, hopefully you already know that. If not, go back and look at some other stuff and ask people in the community if you're not clear. Secondly, you want to spend some time observing your unhelpful behaviors or compulsions so that you're clear about all the things you're no longer going to do, and you have also thought about alternative behaviors that we're going to put into practice. Okay, so that is the second thing you're going to want. The third thing is to have created yourself a hierarchy of fears. You're going to think of that a little bit like a ladder or a roadmap out of your OCD. So when you know what you find the least scary to the most scary, it gives you something to work on, all right? If you just randomly start trying to do exposures on the things that are cropping up or that are most problematic for you in this moment, it's less ideal because A, you may find it completely overwhelming. B, you haven't really got any structure. So when you have a structure, you can start at a level that's good for you. And you can also see how you're progressing. Now, the fourth thing is understanding the goal of ERP. Now, a really common mistake is to think that the goal of ERP is to try and somehow get you to feel okay with that particular trigger or stimulus or subject, all right? Or that it's to prove to you that something bad doesn't happen, or you don't do something bad, or nothing terrible happens to someone else, right? It is not about either of those things, okay? Why? Well, both of those things are related to the content. So the first thing is, if you just get okay with a certain subject or a certain stimulus, then what does OCD do? It goes, oh, great. Well, you can deal with that, but I'm going to make you think about this now instead. So it won't give you a long-term relief from the problem. And the second is also to do with content. So if you're trying to prove to yourself that, nothing bad happens if I touch this, or nothing terrible happens to somebody if I do this, again, it's based on the content of your worries, and OCD will just shift to make you worry about something else. So if it's not that, then what is the goal of ERP? The goal is quite simply to teach yourself and teach your brain that it can and will habituate to the discomfort and the uncertainty and the presence of any of those TISFU that you don't like if you do not do anything to try and escape the situation or make it better. And that even if you make it worse, you can cope with those. And even if you make it worse, you can cope with that discomfort and it will go away on its own. That is a process of habituation. But it only works if you don't do anything to try and avoid, escape, or change those feelings. So that is the goal of ERP. And why is that the goal? Because if you are learning to teach yourself to habituate, to recognize that regardless of how uncomfortable you are or how bad something feels, if you know that regardless, if you don't do anything, that those feelings will start to come down, it doesn't matter what the content is, what OCD tries to throw at you, you will be able to get yourself to a point where you are recognizing the kinds of feelings and what's going on for you and go, I felt this before, don't need to do anything about this, regardless of the content. And that is when you get to a point where it is immaterial to you what OCD tries to do. You're like, yeah, I got this. I can deal with discomfort. I can deal with uncertainty. I know that if I do nothing, this is going to go away on its own. So the idea is we get you to the point where, regardless of what OCD throws at you, what the content is, you know that you can habituate, and your brain has learnt to habituate. So it, over time, stops treating those triggers like massive alarm bells, regardless of the content.